Hey, what's going on, guys? And today I'm going to discuss chunking, or in better terms I appreciate a little bit more, learning how to eat the elephant. Okay, so it's quite simple. How do you eat an elephant, a big, huge elephant? One bite at a time. At the end of the day, in order for you to eat an elephant, you've got to break that sucker down one bite at a time. It's the same thing with massive challenges, insurmountable problem sets, things of that nature. What you have to do is you have to take that overarching objective and you have to break it down in manageable or achievable bite-sized chunks, right? So one problem set at a time. Break that big problem down into smaller problems, stuff you can actually action and get to work. Okay, so when we find ourselves in challenging situations, we start to become overwhelmed, right? I talked a little bit the fight, flight, or freeze, and our physiological response to stress and things like that in previous posts. But again, when we're under a lot of stress, or in a very challenging moment or scenario, it's very easy to become overwhelmed, to become overcome by events, right? So maybe you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, maybe you're not prepared for the situation or scenario you find yourself in. And so what happens is you start getting all these negative thoughts. You start catastrophizing and inevitably looking for a way out. Right? Now, it depends on the scenario. Sometimes, okay, fine, I can look for a way out and choose to not engage in this problem. Okay, that's fine. But you may find yourself in a problem that you can't break away from, right? It could be a life or death situation. It could be a scenario that you find yourself in where you're like, no, I have to get through this, right? Because I've got no other options. Well, in that situation, you've got to break it down. And one of the things you've got to learn how to do right off the bat is just learn how to settle in. So take a wrap off, take a step back, breathe, and just try to hold on a little bit longer. And while you're doing that, you've got to focus your attention on what really matters in that moment, right? So instead of becoming overwhelmed by the severity of whatever it is you're dealing with, you now have to break that problem set down into smaller, actionable objectives and focus on the next achievable step in that process. The bigger the problem, the smaller the objectives, right? If it's just a mediocre problem, well, then those objectives can be a little bit bigger, right? When you're going through a lot of stress, you might have to focus on just literally controlling your negative thought patterns and just putting one foot in front of the other. So it just depends on the situation. You inevitably have to find comfort in the discomfort. And how you do that is by learning how to work through discomfort, right? Having an actionable process, having goals within that process. In SEAL training, what ends up happening to guys, the most physically fit individuals, like I was an instructor there years ago, and I used to see some of the most physically impressive individuals come through training, right? Because everybody knows about SEAL training nowadays. And a lot of guys, a lot of young men are trying to test their mettle. They want to serve their country, but they also want to test themselves against what's arguably one of the hardest selection programs in the world, if not the U.S. military, right? Now, again, you can argue that point and whatnot, but the media, that's the reputation, whether it's true or not, whatever. It's a very difficult program, and a lot of guys try to test themselves. And what ends up happening is as guys find themselves, we have a way of being able to overwhelm even the most mentally tough individuals going through that training, right? And the difference between the guys that are able to process what's going on and break it down and work through it, and the guys that can't, it literally comes down to their ability to just make their world a little bit smaller, figure out that actionable next step in the process, keeping their minds in the right place, right? Keeping your head on straight, keeping your mind right, rigging for pain, and just managing your expectations through that process. And then when you get through to the other side and you've completely got your butt whipped and you don't know how you're going to make it through the day, instead of feeling sorry for yourself and looking for a way out, you just figure out the next problem and focus on doing your best. All right, so over the next, post or, subsequent posts, I'm going to discuss more on how to do this. But until next time, have a good one, guys.